All right, guys, so we're back with the third video of this long series. And make sure you guys like and comment and subscribe so that way you guys get updates whenever I post a new video. But so now we got the engine off the engine stand. So the reason we did that and we put it on these cradles with the casters that we picked up from Proton Store, the reason we're putting them on here is because I'm gonna go ahead and replace this flex plate. The reason I'm replacing it, you see how this one has 3 holes, our converter has 6, and I wanna make sure we use all 6 bolts, so bolt holes. So we're gonna go ahead and take this off. We're gonna replace it with another GM flex plate. I'll show you the difference when I pull it off. And then we're gonna mate it with the transmission that we picked up from MP Transmissions. But before we do that, I'm gonna show you guys things to check before you even put everything together. Because if some of this stuff is wrong, like your converter doesn't line up, or the flex plate's the wrong one, when you put it together and you drop it into the car and you figure out that's the wrong crap because the bolt holes don't line up, then you just wasted a ton of time and you're gonna be super mad. All right, so we're gonna remove these bolts now to take out the flex plate. You can't use an impact gun on this. I don't really like to use an impact gun on drivetrain stuff. So we're gonna use this flex plate holder that we picked up from Amazon, and we're gonna install it where the starter goes, and that's gonna keep the flex plate from spinning while we're trying to torque these down or take them off. Oh. Oh.
You mind?
My bad. All right, guys, so the reason you want to get the proper flex plate for your engine is because you can see how it's spaced out from the block. So that distance is going to be the same on every LS. It doesn't matter if you have a 4L80E, 4L60E transmission. The spacing needs to be the same, and the spacing is what dictates the starter, how far it kicks out. So if you have the wrong spacing, then if you replace the OEM starter, it's not going to engage correctly. So you want to make sure that's correct. So you can see how this right here, flex plate is a little bit dished in, which gives it the correct spacing. And you'll see when we replace it with the other one, you see how that one is actually flat, but it has a spacer that kicks out a little bit. All right, so we got the bolts off. Now the flex plate should not be pressed on there. It should be tight, but you should be able to jiggle it off without any huge issues. Now, when it comes to the actual crankshaft, there is a few different crankshafts that they had available for the 6-liter engine. They makes a crankshaft either short or long. But that was on the Gen 3 engines. This is a Gen 4 engine. The Gen 3 engines from 99 to 2000, I believe, they either had a short crankshaft where the seal was like right next to the end of the crankshaft, and they had a longer one. The longer one probably would have stuck out like right here. So this one looks like it's in between. This is a Gen 4 engine though. They only have one crankshaft. So let's take a look at the flex plates real quick to show you the difference. So this is the one that came with the engine. It mounts right here. So imagine this is a crankshaft, the wood is a crankshaft. This is where it mounts. Now this is the one we're replacing. You can see on the teeth, I don't know if you can see it really good, but you can see how the one on the original one is sitting up higher this way. Now you see that gap in between here? If this was actually sitting on the crankshaft, it would actually be sitting in deeper. So then this gap would actually be even bigger. It'd be like that. That's why you need a spacer here to give you the correct spacing. You put the spacer underneath. Try to do it with one hand. A little bit. But you put it underneath like that, and then that would give you the same spacing there. As you can see, they're pretty much flush. Now, if you use a flat flex plate and you don't use that spacer, your flex plate is going to be way off. So just a heads up, guys. So another thing you have to remember is that these were the bolts that came with this flex plate that did not have the spacer. Obviously the spacer adds some thickness to it, so you will have to get longer bolts. We went with these ARP bolts, and the reason we did that is because they cost the same as the OEM bolts. They're a little bit stronger, or a lot stronger. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check the torque converter and make sure that everything fits on it. So first thing we do is the spacer here. Now the spacer will be sticking out this way, so we'll make sure that fits in there nice and smooth, which it does. It shouldn't have too much play, but it shouldn't be tight either. All right, the next check is we're gonna make sure that these pads here, this is a pad where the torque converter mounts to. I'll make sure that all the bolt holes line up to that. Now in our torque converter, we only have 3 of them. So they do line up, which is good, but it does have 2 different sets. You see that of bolt holes. So obviously one of them lines up and the other one doesn't. And now we're gonna mount the flex plate and the spacer to the engine, and we're gonna do one more check. All right, so next we're gonna put our spacer in. Now, you see these two holes right here that are threaded. There's one there and one across from it. So I'm not sure exactly what they're for, but what I would use them for is if for some reason this piece gets stuck on there and I can't take it out because it is kind of almost pressed on. If it's stuck on there and I can't get it off, I would use these threaded holes to put a bolt in there. It's the same thread as the ones for the flex plate. And I would use that to pry it off and push it off and pull it out. So with that being said, I'll make sure that those two threaded holes do not line up to that hole there. So I'm gonna put one like right here and here. And before we figure out the actual orientation of this, I want to make sure that all my flex plate bowls are gonna go in their respective holes. So I like to run them in kind of loose, just by hand. So I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna push the spacer on. So you could also use the original bolts, since they're shorter, to run it all the way down so it's flat right there. And once you get it flat, you go ahead and pull these off and then put the flex plate on there. All right, on this flex plate, it does have a part where it says this side to the engine right here. You see where it says engine side. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that engine side obviously goes to the engine. So we flip it around. Now you also notice there's two holes that are in the center of the 6 holes. Those 2 holes right there, you want to line it up to that, because if you don't line it up to that, you won't be able to use that method I told you about to push a bolt in there to pull it out. So you want to put it like that. And before you push it all the way in, you want to line up the rest of your bolt holes to make sure every single bolt will actually fit. And if for some reason you have that and it's still in the way, you can take it off your little flex plate holder, which I'm gonna take off right now. And then we're gonna tighten this down, torque it down, and I'll show you the final check you should do before you put everything together. So on these ARP bolts, we're gonna put Loctite 242 right on the threads right here. And then underneath right here, we're gonna put the assembly lube or the fastener lube that comes with it. Then we're gonna torque them down to 85 foot-pounds. All right, so we got the flex plate holder back in there. We're gonna torque them all down to 85 foot-pounds. Then after that, we're gonna check the converter to make sure it's engaging correctly. All right, so what I'm gonna check now is I'm gonna make sure the converter engages the flex plate correctly. And the way you do that is you slide this piece, the center piece, into here. And as you slide it in, you gotta make sure that these pads right here on the converter touch these pads right here on the flex plate. And there's no gap there, because if there is a gap, that means this is not gonna be seated all the way in. And you gotta figure it out, because if not, you're gonna have issues. You can't fix that with just spacers. This converter needs to go in here, and this needs to touch that. Come in from the side a little bit. All right, so you can see this bad boy's heavy as heck. So we go in the snout, go in there, boom. And it touches, so we should be good to go. All right, guys, so we got the torque converter in. Before you put the torque converter in, you want to top it off with transmission fluid. So we put in maybe like a half a quart, but just fill it up till it's like at the bottom of the neck. We put it in. If you're curious to know if this went all the way in, you could take something flat across here and then measure to the pad, and it should be about 1 1/4 inches. That way you know it's all the way in. If you've never done a converter before, if you have, you'll hear the clunk when it goes all the way in and bottoms out. So next up, we're gonna put this on the jack and try to level it out this way and then push it in there. All right, so we got the converter and the transmission on that. I'm actually gonna slide the freaking engine into that, and then we're just gonna adjust the height there. So hopefully we get pretty close. We can look over here. I think pick up the back of the transmission. Right there. Yeah, hold it there. Jiggle it. There you go. We're in. Just like that, we're in, guys. All right, guys, the engine and transmission is bolted together, and we are getting ready to drop it into the 87 El Camino. But before we do that, on the next video, guys, I'm gonna go over some of the common issues that I see people having with the 4L60E and 4L80E transmission. So you guys make sure you stay tuned for that. As always, guys, if you want to support me, buy some merch. If you want to support me directly, you can always use my Cash App and send me some funds so I can continue making these videos. And I will catch you guys on the next video.